Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Council meeting on February 18th, 2025. Welcome to everyone here today, and we have a full council chamber. That's always nice to see, and all of those who are watching on YouTube. I'll start with roll call of council. I'm Mayor Shantz, am present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Grant.
Present.
Councillor Bryant.
Present.
Councillor Burgess.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
And Councillor Schwint.
Present.
Thank you. Before we get going on the agenda items, council needs to reconvene in open session. Do we have a motion to reconvene? Councillor Grant, Councillor Cadeau, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I start by acknowledging that the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial, and Indigenous people have lived here from time immemorial. And I thank the Chinatan, also called the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land and who continue to share and steward this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. It's been 4 weeks since Donald Trump took office, and I was pondering on this week. The world is changing. It always does on some level, but history shows examples of times where there were similar changes, and they didn't always bode well for the countries involved. The effects of tariffs, monetary values, taxes, and trade are interconnected and complex. A cursory research has taught me that tariffs have come and gone at various levels in North America and around the world for centuries, and cause and effect can be argued on their efficacy. What is more concerning is the idea that President Trump is setting the stage for a dictatorship and world dominance. He wants to annex Canada. We have always stood with our allies to preserve democracy, and this is not a time to step aside and let him intimidate us or overcome us. We are strong and free and want to remain that way. I don't have the answers, but I know that together there are Canadians who do. And we will do what is necessary in order to preserve our country and our independence. To that end, regional heads of council and our CAOs are meeting Friday to discuss the impacts locally and to start to chart a path forward. We'll each make our own individual economic decisions, and we will respect each individual's decisions. Growing up, I remember a campaign to buy North American. It seemed to work. North America became very prosperous. At this point in history, I encourage you to buy Canadian wherever you can, understanding that it's not a straightforward path and that we are still figuring out where that path is leading. We'll do this together. Later, I will introduce a motion to ask staff to purchase in ways that promote the Canadian economy as much as possible. But let's begin today's meeting with the national anthem and follow it with a moment of silence.
From
Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, there are no items to come forward from closed session. We have minutes from December 17th, January 7th, January 9th, January 14th, January 21st, January 23rd, and February 4th. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Grant, Councillor Schwint, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The following portion of the meeting is for information only and no decisions will be made tonight. This is a public meeting. Any questions can be directed to Development Services staff following the meeting. I declare the planning public meeting to be open. But before we begin, I'll just review the steps that participants need to follow. Each speaker has a maximum of 7 minutes unless the clerk has set a different time. There will be a timer on the screen and you will hear a warning when you have 1 minute and when your time is up. Once you are finished, you can return to your seat. You may listen in to the rest of the meeting or leave when you want to. Council will hear from all speakers and ask questions of clarification. Council discussion and debate will start when all speakers on a topic have finished. So the item tonight is DES 03-2025 zone change application ZC 2025-01 786 Group Inc. 265 Woolwich Street South. That's a mouthful. And I will call on Senior Planner Stephen Dykstra to present the staff report. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Okay, good evening. My name is Stephen Dykstra. I'm a planner for the Township of Woolwich, and I'm just presenting here an application for a rezoning application. And I'll make this quick as I think there's a lot of people here for other things. These lands are located on the south side of Breslau. They are generally flat. It's agricultural lands, and on the back portion of it, there's some environmental lands with some trees on it. It's located on Woolwich Street South, and it's just north of the intersection of Fountain and Woolwich Street. So the purpose of this application is these lands are zoned agricultural. The applicant is proposing a 3-year temporary zone for site-specific provisions, which include to permit truck transportation terminal. Again, that's for 3 years. The lands are zoned primary agricultural land, and there's some environmental feature lands to the rear of the property. It should be noted that a temporary zoning bylaw is not required to meet all the required policies of the official plan, as it is a temporary use. Again, the current land use is agriculture. The proposed is for some site-specific provisions, including the truck transport terminal. There's some additional side yard requirements that they're requiring for a total of 96 parking spaces with minimum parking space widths of 2.75 meters. Here's a rendering of the proposal, which includes 96 parking spaces and includes a stormwater management pond at the rear of the property, and it has access onto Woolwich Street South. So again, the purpose of this presentation and the purpose of this application right now is to provide information to council and to the public, and to provide opportunities for the public to speak to it. No decisions are going to be made here, and we're going to continue to work with the applicant and the public where they comment, as well as any internal and external agencies that has comments on this. And then we'll be providing a report back to council on this application in the future once our assessment is completed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Dykstra. I'm just wondering, looking at that plan again, would they be looking to cut down a majority of the trees in the back of that property?
Through you, Mayor, they are not proposing to reduce, to take down any of those trees. I don't believe at this point. That's why the stormwater management pond is located where it is. And I believe the idea is to preserve most of those trees.
All right, thank you. And then with the temporary use bylaw, what is their plan, or have they indicated a plan after 3 years? Would it just be reapplying for that permit, or?
So we're at an interesting time right now because of the new official plan, or there's a Breslau land use plan that's going to be presented actually later this evening. These lands are proposed to be part of employment lands in the future. So there is an opportunity perhaps in the future, if these lands do get designated employment, that they'll have the opportunity to apply for permanent rezoning in the future, in which case then they wouldn't have to go for 3 years again. In the event that they don't receive approval within the next 3 years, then it would revert back to agricultural uses, and that would be the only permitted use on the lands at that time.
Thank you. And then just to follow up, if that were to occur and it was to revert back to agricultural land, are there any obligations on the applicant to basically restore that land back to agricultural? I'm just wondering what kind of measures we have in place that if they're putting in a large parking lot, that we can then restore that to agricultural.
We're actually having a topic, we were talking about that earlier with me and my manager and director about this. We weren't fully sure on this, but we're of the understanding that they wouldn't not necessarily have to revert back to agricultural lands. It's just that they wouldn't be able to use it for the new provisions. And we could potentially look at ways of mitigating that. The other option, though, is that if they did try to park vehicles on that site, that'd be against the bylaw. And so bylaw enforcement could go out there and enforce that they were not allowed to park on the lot at that time.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to staff. Putting in a water retaining pond seems like a permanent structure to me. So is there anything precluding them from coming forward with a permanent change to zoning now, or is that something that we would have to wait for that official plan to change?
Through the mayor to Councillor Cadeau, yeah, they because it doesn't adhere to the designation, we would not be open to receiving a permanent zoning bylaw at this time, only a 3-year temporary at this time, because it would not adhere to the official plan. But yeah, within the next few years, most likely it will be open up to that opportunity. And so, but it's on the applicant's own risk. And they know that going into one of these temporary rezoning, that it is at their own risk for providing or to construct all the infrastructure required for it, though.
Okay. Thank you. We have one registered participant, Douglas Snyder. Is Douglas here? Or online? We have him online.
Through Mayor Shantz, I'm not seeing him online. I know we did have some trouble communicating with him today, so if he's not here, we can always touch base with him afterwards.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the public gallery that would like to speak to this issue? Not seeing anyone jumping up. So then I declare this public meeting to be closed. Thank you. Our first presentation this evening is by Tiffany Svensson, Technical Expert for TRAC, which is our Technical Remediation Advisory Committee, and she's going to present the committee's biannual update. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to use them? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I was listening. On, off.
Thank you for this opportunity to provide this update on behalf of TRAC and the chair, Councillor Cadeau. I'm hoping to keep it at the right sort of high level of interest to you all. I want to just quickly refer back to the August presentation last year, because this is intended to build on that and basically follow up on to show you next steps that they happened and what exactly the content was. So let me just make sure. So I'll go through the next steps from the August 28th or 27th meeting our presentation I had here, and provide you with a bit of a review of what happened in 2024, and then provide some work plan and status updates for this year, and including some next steps. So just reminding everybody that in August update, we indicated that there would be some communication to the public through the Engage WR, and the other thing we indicated that was going to happen in the fourth quarter of 2024, and that there was going to be a technical experts meeting in the fourth quarter, and somewhere in there was going to be some draft documents finalized in the first quarter here in 2025. We were also working on building consensus within TRAC and sort of developing the public consultation process for what happens beyond 2028 when the current order expires, in terms of what all the work at Lanxess and in the community around the groundwater remediation, what will take place beyond that. So Engage WR has a sub-site or a sub-portal for Woolwich Township specifically. And I just, this is just a screenshot of what it looked like about a month ago, but I understand that it's about to go onto a different platform and might look just a little different than what you see on the left side of this slide. But the important bit I want to draw your attention to is on the right. I would love it if everybody in the community would subscribe to this, because it's a way for us to disseminate information, for people to be able to see reports, perhaps have some questions answered. Also, there's some important links, like there's a link to Wilfrid Laurier University's archive, which includes a lot of the historical background articles and information. And also, I want to point out that there's a link as well there, because I want to preface everything tonight with the fact that the water here in Elmira is safe to drink and also meets all drinking water standards. The water is piped in from the region of Waterloo's well network, integrated well network, and those results that are required to be reported to the public are available at that link that I'm showing there. So that's just an underlying point I want to make sure everybody knows. Now, in the technical experts meeting that was held in September, we got to sort of get an updated understanding, or sort of, there were a number of new faces around the table. So there's a new technical manager of the project at Lanxess. Her name is Hadley Stam. And so she, as with most people who start in on looking at this subject, did a deep dive to understand everything that was coming at her. And in that process, she wanted to see basically an updated, what's called a conceptual site model. And that is basically a way of looking at the site to understand the properties and the behavior of groundwater and the conditions that the site is in. So she wanted to get a comprehensive current understanding of the site. And so that's number one that we sort of discussed at this meeting. And one of the things that we are now, the stage we are at in terms of cleaning up, is that while there are still locations that have concentrations that are above drinking water standards, there's a large portion of the aquifer that actually meets drinking water standards. And what we're challenged with right now is the fact that we've got a number of wells that still draw, the extraction wells, the wells that are drawing out contaminated groundwater that exceed the drinking water standard. But it's harder and harder to get that mass out of the remaining aquifer. And so what they're looking at is how can we now approach these areas that are more what I would call recalcitrant or more challenging to clean up. And so one of the very first things that they tend to look at is what are the driving forces and what are the sort of the limitations and challenges. And that's all kind of in the conceptual site model. The key takeaways of this meeting, which was attended by Lanxess and the new representatives there, GHD, their consultants. They have also brought in another consultant to sort of do a third peer review on everything. That's Arcadis, and the Ministry of Environment was there, Region of Waterloo was there, and community representatives on the track committee. So the key takeaways from this meeting were that the driver or the contaminant that is the most challenging and the focus, because if this can be cleaned up, then the chlorobenzene, which is the other contaminant, will also be cleaned up. So NDMA is the driver for what they're looking at. I've already mentioned the conceptual site model being updated and looked at. They're also looking at the groundwater chemistry that's there. So things like pH, temperature, some of the other constituents, like we have a lot of hard water here in this region, and things, dissolved minerals and things that can affect the types of solutions that they might look at next. And so that's another thing they're going to be looking at. They're looking at how to basically enhance the removal of the mass or the contaminants that are there. They indicated and have said so and written down that they are open to all ideas, options, and technologies. They are casting the net wide and looking at how to best approach the problem from practicality point of view, time frame point of view, cost point of view, and overall community acceptance point of view. The other person attending or people attending the technical experts meeting were members of the Region of Waterloo staff, and they indicated that they are facing tremendous pressure to supply a significantly growing population in the next 5 to 10 years with water, with clean, drinkable water. And this has put the use of this aquifer back on the radar as a future source of water. It's not currently declared as such, but it is not being written off as never going to be used. So it is of value and importance to the region as well that this aquifer gets cleaned up to drinking water standards. So these are all things that were discussed and sort of noted in our technical experts meeting. So moving on to sort of some of the things that actually were completed in 2024 and looking at how those items are going to be worked on in 2025. I've divided them up into kind of categories. So the remediation of the off-site municipal aquifer is one category, and that is the category that the order applies to. So this is everything from the containment treatment systems to monitoring requirements to future use of the aquifer. There is an annual monitoring report that I usually direct people to who want to know the most recent results or understand if their particular property might be in an area that has impacted groundwater. And that's the annual monitoring report that's due every year at the end of March. It's on the Engage WR site as sort of one of the reports that you can look at. It provides a very nice graphical presentation, maps and figures and things where you will see NDMA impacted groundwater and chlorobenzene impacted groundwater. The technical experts meeting, as I just described, focused entirely on this remediation of the municipal aquifer. We didn't get into some of the other areas or buckets of information that I'm going to move on to shortly. And the other items that happened this past year was there was a screening document that was drafted in 2018 that at the time we were TAG and RAC structure. It was never finalized, and it presented a bunch of technologies to get at these difficult cleanup spots, but it was never finalized. And so it was revisited now in 2024 and issued as a final document. It was revisited from the point of view, like, do the facts presented in this still apply? What is any new information that we might have to enhance our understanding? So that we received that. And then the other thing that's been outstanding for quite some time because of availability of contractors and a number of other issues that delayed a new well coming online, and that was PW5 or PW6. So PW6 replaces PW5. It was a very important well for extracting as part of the containment treatment system. It has now finally come online. They were testing to determine the target pumping rate for that. And the latest update I received was on Friday, and they are still determining what that particular target pumping rate will be, but it is up and running. It's integrated into the system, and they're just trying to determine what a safe pumping rate will be for that well. I've mentioned in terms of what's coming up now in 2025, the CSM, or the Conceptual Site Model, is under review. There's the annual monitoring report that's coming out at the end of March. That's a really great presentation to see. So I'll encourage you when TRAC has that meeting to come out or join virtually to that, because it sort of really shows the state of the union of the aquifer, basically. There's proposed aquifer testing. So at this point in time, LANXESS, the ministry is looking to LANXESS to propose a remedial action plan. Like, what are you going to do beyond 2028 or in the next few years to get us to beyond 2028? And part of that proposal includes aquifer testing, bench scale testing on all the chemicals and parameters and conditions of the aquifer, and then presenting remedial alternatives or screening of these different remedial technologies. And then finally updating the CSM with all of that information. So that's sort of like the steps to get to a final remedial action plan, which no matter what comes up, they propose it still has to be reviewed and approved by the ministry. So it's not entirely up to LANXESS just to do this. They have to present a remedial action plan that is acceptable to the ministry. The other bucket of considerations that we have to deal with is the creek risk assessment. Now, with the municipal aquifer, it's important to know that it's being worked on based on an order, like a ministry order. In the creek risk assessment situation, that is entirely voluntary. So that is not something that's been ordered to do, but it is something that LANXESS certainly was encouraged to do, and the questions and the concerns of the community really flagged it as something that would be a good thing to do, and it was appreciated that they did take it seriously. And so one of the key things here that's been a lingering concern is like what sort of legacy soil and sediment issues might be present that could be or present a risk to the public. And so there's a very rigorous risk assessment process that now is followed in completing risk assessments. It's a very involved process, and it's an iterative process. So you start out and you sample and you do analytics and statistics on the results, and then you present a draft report. It gets reviewed, and then if there are gaps or questions raised or concerns, resampling and redoing the whole piece that might new sample results might need to show a flag as being something that you might need to evaluate a little or assess a little closer. There was a number of floodplain soil areas of floodplain soils that the ministry felt needed to be looked at a little more closely. And so the ministry went out and actually sampled those areas for dioxins and furans. And they provided us with a technical memorandum in December, which we are in the process of reviewing and will be discussing in subsequent meetings. These results are being incorporated in the next version of the risk assessment for the creek. Basically, we are waiting for the second revision or the second version of the draft human health ecological risk assessment, which should be responding to the ministry's comments on the first draft and TRAC's comments that we had provided in writing. There's one important piece that is outstanding of an issue of concern, and this also sort of fits under the umbrella of consensus building. There are members of TRAC, community members on TRAC, that have some lingering concerns in the lower, sort of the image on the lower right there. The yellow outline, that's the Lanxess property, and then the terminology of the east side gap area. This is something that you might hear spoken of. That's the area where the red circle is. And the concern is that historically, we're talking 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, before they cleaned up the areas where the waste was stored. And you'll see, this is a historic image of the area. You see those little black dots that are, I don't know if I have a pointer on this, but there's some black dots on the right-hand side of the yellow boundary. Those were the retention ponds, and they would often overflow, and that overflow moved off-site. And so there have been investigations done and remediation done on the soil, but one area that some members of the TRAC feel is under-evaluated is that area in the red circle. And so there are a number of efforts underway to try and sort of resolve that. And that's sort of what I would put in the category of consensus building, a sort of a satisfactory, robust answer to the concerns. The other piece that we needed to follow up on was the ECA biomonitoring review. So a few years back, the Ministry of Natural Resources put a stop to the use of leaches that move from one subwatershed into another watershed to be used as a monitoring tool. So basically, these were things they biomonitored, they put in cages into the creek, let them sit for X number of weeks, come and collect them, and then analyze them. That can't be done anymore. So they had to, Lanxess had to propose an alternate way of doing an equivalent level of biomonitoring for the creek. And they had initially proposed that they didn't need to replace that particular biomonitoring requirement with anything because they had repeatedly demonstrated that there was no concern. The ministry did not accept that. TRAC tag did not accept that, and so they came back with a monitoring program that involved fish. And so that is, the ministry's reviewing that proposal at present, and we're hoping to hear a response on that now here in the first quarter of 2025. The next thing that I wanted to provide an update on is the public consultation process. So sort of track terms of reference, you all accepted and approved them in April of 2024. We had provided track as a transition measure with all the outstanding questions and issues that sort of moved from TAG and RAC and get them addressed. We received a response to all of those outstanding things in November of last year. And some of them, I think, were answered more robustly than others. So I think there's a few things we want to see followed up on. TRAC's 2025 meeting schedule and preliminary agendas have been laid out. We're hoping that that'll keep us moving forward with progress over the course of this year. We want to make sure we maintain and populate the Engage WR dashboard. Again, if you subscribe, I subscribed a while back, and I am getting notification when anything new comes up. So, it's a good way of tracking it if it's an area of interest for you. But building on what was there, it's very preliminary right now, but building on that is what we hope to do as well. And then very importantly, actually, is working on the public consultation process for when the remedial action plan does get presented to the community. How do we get feedback, and developing a process that will be that will capture fully the community's feedback on some of these proposed action plans and next steps and goals. So just to make it very clear, I'm hoping that the slide deck will be sort of a reference material as well as an update. But basically, a remedial action plan is a guideline that proposes a series of engineering and geological processes in order to feasibly perform contamination cleanup actions over a strategic period of time. And of course, for the community here, the sooner the better. It's been a very, very long journey, and so that's obviously a very important aspect of what we will be keeping an eye out for in this remedial action plan, but also recognizing that there's practicalities that need to be considered, and also efficacy of things that are being proposed, that they actually work and they're not too experimental, that they're actually proven technologies and proven approaches. So next steps, this is basically what I'll build the next update later this fall on. I'll be taking these next steps and making sure that we're making progress on that. So the technical investigation and the remedial alternative evaluation is to happen basically summer, fall of this year. And that is specifically evaluating the off-site aquifer. And I put in here pseudo steady state conditions to determine whether potential pumping remediation enhancements could enhance the mass recovery. So what that means is they're turning off a couple of the wells off-site. So anything that's involved with containing and collecting the impacted aquifer, that's still running. So we're not losing containment on site. But what they need to be able to do is see, what is this aquifer like under natural conditions? So right now the aquifer is being pumped like crazy. So they're going to stop the pumping in an area that's clean or cleaned up, and just see how the aquifer responds and behaves to pumping. Because one of the ways you can recover more mass is by turning on and off the pump over certain periods of time. And then you can capture more mass with less energy input, and therefore a more efficient way of removing the mass. The other thing is, as I mentioned, conducting the bench testing. This is all to do with water chemistry. They have to do that to understand the natural conditions and the natural attenuation, meaning the natural way the aquifer cleans itself up. And then based on these results, they will develop this remedial alternative technology screening and groundwater remediation and action plan that they want to do. So all of that is to happen basically in 2025. And then that is something we will work with to provide comment on, to get input on. But how that's done, that's where we're at in terms of consultation. The creek assessment, we're waiting for them to incorporate the floodplain soil data that the ministry collected and basically revise the document based on that. And also the biological monitoring is something that we're waiting on the ministry to review. Again, these are, the risk assessment is a voluntary process, but it is important, obviously. The biomonitoring is a regulated issue, and the ministry is getting back to them, we've been told, in Q1 of this year. Public communication, again, I guess I'm going to repeat myself 3 times, maybe 4. Engage WR on the Woolwich site. And then building consensus within track. We have a site visit that will be happening here in Q1. And one of those issues that we'll be looking at is the east side to help build consensus around what the actual conditions are and what if any, gap still is there in terms of the data. And then also obviously developing community priorities with respect to the municipal aquifer, cleanup post-2028. So, and ongoing monitoring and hotspot cleanup. We do have that still on the table with respect to the creek, but it's so closely linked with the risk assessment that Lanxess needs to and wants to wait until they have the feedback on the or the revised draft of the risk assessment completed and the feedback of the ministry before they proceed with any actual work in the creek. And then developing the process is very much part of next steps. And then these are the additional resources, same as the last time, but again, updated versions of these will be on the Engage WR link. And I think that is a thank you for your attention at this time. Are there any questions, or do you have time for that?
Well, we can take a little bit of time. Thank you to Tiffany for the update and for your work with the committee. And thank you to Councillor Cadeau for chairing it and moving things along. It's a very technical committee. Are there any questions? No, I'm not seeing any. So
Great.
thank you for coming in.
Engage WR. You'll get all answers there.
Okay, thank you. With council's indulgence, I'm going to confuse the public that's watching and say we have 2 things we do, presentations and delegations. And I know we have a delegation here from the University of Waterloo. No? Yes, a delegation. Let me get my words right. We have a delegation from the University of Waterloo who would like to give us a nice light update after a technical update, because the next one we're going into is technical again. So I will call on Rolly Webster of U Sports Women's Hockey. And yeah, you have 7 minutes. The other was a presentation. They get to take a long time, but welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. To Mayor Shantz, council members, grateful to be here. My name is Rolly Webster. I'm the Director of Athletics and Recreation, University of Waterloo. We're yet to have a campus here in Woolwich. However, we're very grateful for the partnership. Yeah, I don't have that kind of power. So very grateful for the partnership, though, with the Township of Woolwich. So we will be bringing the best 8 teams in women's hockey in this country to compete over 4 days and 11 games at the Dan Schneider Memorial Arena. March 20th, 23rd. So I'm here with Coach Dolly Meggs and some of our team members, our captain Leo Herfert, but really grateful to be hosting this in this community. We know the passion for hockey. We know the sense of community, the sense of volunteerism. We've seen it with the support from sponsorship to partnership, and really excited for the fan base to come out and cheer on these ladies. These are the defending provincial champions behind me, and we hope to capture our first ever national championship in this township next month. So I'll ask Captain Leah Hereford to say a few words. Yeah.
Thanks, Rolly. Hi, I'm Leah. I'm the captain of this team this year, and I just want to extend our first of all our thanks for allowing us to use the Dan Snyder Arena for our nationals. Like Rolly said, it's going to be the top 8 teams in the country, which is going to be great. And I think looking back at my childhood, if I had got the chance to see that growing up, that would have made a world of difference. And I think that's also part of the reason why the motto is see them, be them. And yeah, that's something that we really hold close to our hearts for that. So yeah, thank you, first of all. Second of all, we are just super stoked to even be a part of the Woolwich community for the week of nationals. I've firsthand experienced the passion and loud energy in that arena. My brother played for the Listowel Cyclones, so playoff time got a little ugly around here. But yeah, so we're just super stoked to be a part of that, and this time on the other end of that energy. So yeah, and getting to know the little girls at the Woolwich Girls Hockey Minor Hockey Association has been super great, and they're all excited, and I just wish that I had a chance to do that as a kid. So yeah, we're super excited, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome, and we look forward to the games and to, you know, clinch that championship again. Council, any Councillor Cadeau?
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to the delegation. If residents wanted to come out and watch some games, what's the best way in which they could get tickets for this?
Tickets are on screen, so go Warriors Go /tickets. So that's our website, but information is in the slide deck. And yeah, really challenging people to put butts in seats. The support of the corporate community, of the community, is really important, but I think we define or prioritize the student athlete experience at the University of Waterloo, and definitely for the ladies behind me. And I think we can do that 2 ways at this championship. One is the win. They'll work on that. And 2 is to have great fan base and great fan support. So thank you for the question, and hope that the community will come out and support these ladies. Leah mentioned see them, be them. I think we're seeing the attention greatly deserved by female sport in this country, PWHL, WNBA, and it's perfect time to come out and cheer on the top hockey in this country when we compete for the national championship here in this community. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Thank you very much for coming in, and we really look forward to watching the games and cheering you on. And
Appreciate your support.
Go Warriors!
Thank you.
Water, water, water.
Lou.
Okay. Now we'll move back to our regularly scheduled agenda, to the Asset Management Plan Progress Report. And I will turn the floor over to Chelsea Raymond.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your time. As part of our asset management journey, the Township has a legislated requirement under Ontario Regulation 58817 that sets out a phased approach to implement asset management planning for municipal infrastructure. Staff, with the help of Aspire, are now working on completing the last phase of this regulation that must be approved by Council by July 1st of this year. This update builds on the 2024 Council-approved asset management plan by establishing proposed levels of service and developing a financial strategy to meet these proposed levels of service. This will consider the Township's long-term sustainability by continuing to deliver services for current and future residents at the lowest life cycle cost possible. Tonight, we have Aspire Consulting Group here with us to present the results from the asset management survey and the drafted proposed levels of service. For information, there will also be another planned progress update to Council in April to present the life cycle and financial strategy that's developed using these proposed levels of service presented tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Simon, Amanda, and Dariush from Aspire to present the results.
Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you, members of council and Mayor Shantz, for the opportunity to present on this asset management plan and this important milestone. Today's presentation, let me just make sure my clicker is working. Okay, doesn't look like, here we go. Okay, so for this presentation, we'll be looking at the overall goals and objectives, as well as an update on our project to date on the development of the asset management plan, as well as the survey that has been taken place with the community to understand perspectives and experiences on levels of service, and we'll findings from that survey, as well as key takeaways and how that ties to the remainder of the work as part of this asset management plan. So the update and the goal of this update is really to review the engagement survey, like I mentioned. And as was mentioned, this is part of the requirements of Ontario Regulation 58817 for developing asset management plans, as well as including proposed levels of service by July 1st, 2025. It's also really a key element of asset management planning, which is key for any organization responsible for the management of services that are dependent on physical assets. Our goal today, like I mentioned, is to present the results of community engagement that has taken place as part of this work. So the proposed levels of service really outline the expectations and understanding of the level of performance for the infrastructure assets and the services that support those. When we're developing the levels of service, we're looking at balancing really affordability, achievability of the level of service, the risk associated with continuing to provide that level of service, as well as alignment with strategic direction. Through this process, we'll be looking at options for the levels of service across all of the asset classes and the asset groups and services that look at either maintaining the current level of service, decreasing, or increasing that level of service. And that's partly informed by the engagement that has been conducted to date that we'll be speaking about the results from. The next step from that is to develop financial scenarios and a financial strategy that will then outline the expenditures and the costs required to be able to sustain that level of service over the next 10 years. Oh, clicker is not fully functioning. Okay, there we go. Oops. So the financial strategy is the next stage in this. So that will follow after the work that we're currently undertaking. And in fact, actually, the work on the financial strategy is in progress. And essentially, that outlines the long-term sustainability to achieve the level of service goals that are defined through the level of service framework. And really aims to ensure fiscal responsibility while also balancing the performance requirements and the needs for the assets. It's part of the asset management plan. So several key components of that. One is basing it on the life cycle needs to be able to achieve the level of service and being able to predict what that will look like over the next 10 years. The second is to look at the funding streams to be able to support that, whether it's through existing mechanisms, through grant programs or other support, as well as through additional potential revenue streams, as well as then alignment to the overall budget and funding gaps and strategies to mitigate those. And this is really an iterative process that takes place looking at the levels of service, the cost to provide that service and the funding strategy to achieve that, and then really calibrating between the two to develop an overall asset management plan. Seems here we go. So what does this all mean? Essentially, the updated level of service will be done for each asset category that forms part of the asset management plan. The goal is by the end of that they're defined and accepted, and that then there is that feasible financial plan to be able to achieve that level of service, as well as quantification and estimation of what that level of service will look like over time. And of course, this is part of, as we mentioned, that compliance with Ontario Regulation 58817, but also it is really good practice to really maximize the value and make the best possible decisions around assets. I think we need an asset management plan for the presentation. Oh, no, it's not here. Oh, here we go. It seems there might be a bit of a delay, I think. Here we go. Okay. So, I've got to point it over there. That's probably what it is. Okay, so in addition to developing each of the current levels of service, which were developed previously within the asset management plan, we've really engaged the community on understanding the community's interpretation of performance of the services, as well as their recommended improvements, the areas that they see are the highest priority, and then the willingness to pay for service enhancements. And we're going to actually take you through, in the next several slides, an overview of the outcomes and the feedback that we heard. Next slide, please. Okay, and now Simon Lau is going to take us through the results.
If we can go, if we can go back a slide, I think we jumped ahead. Yeah. So on a survey that we completed, there was a total of 65 respondents that were received. We ran the survey between December 4th and January 6th. A majority of those respondents are from or live in the township of Woolwich. And this is one of the first surveys that was done to get public feedback, and it does align with some of the results that we've seen in past surveys completed by Woolwich, most recently on the budget side. So we definitely recognize, there's a little bit of survey fatigue that has occurred, but the response is good. We got some good insight and some good information that we'll be able to carry forward. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what we found in some of the key highlights that we got here is that 60% of the respondents were unaware of the township's asset management plan. Coming out of that, we did see some common feedback that we want to bring through and talk to about. So we saw some themes with regards to transportation being a priority, key areas including maintenance and sidewalks, repairs, snow removal. We saw another common theme with stormwater feedback, looking at ways to improve flood mitigation, improving drainage, looking at one of the areas that was where the community was willing to accept a reduction or accept reducing of funding. So we asked, as Darius mentioned, what they would take in terms of would they be willing to reduce some funding to see what the impact on levels of service would be. This was an area that came through. We also saw that the facilities or aging amenities within recreation facilities was an area that they were also comfortable with reducing some funding. In our survey, when we asked about willingness to pay, we did see that to improve services, 32% of the respondents were willing to pay more, 22% were not sure, and 20% of the respondents were willing to contribute an additional $20 or more annually to meet these services. And as we went through the different service categories, we looked at what the priorities are and ranked all the various ones. Coming out on top, fire services is ranked one of the highest, followed by water, transportation, indoor rec, stormwater and wastewater were ranked slightly lower with outdoor recreation spaces. Go to the next slide. So these are the 6 service areas that we completed the survey on: recs and facilities, emergency services, stormwater, transportation, sanitary, wastewater collection, water distribution. So we're going to kind of go through these 6 areas and bring towards what some of the findings were from the survey itself. Next slide, please. So recreation facilities, they were identified as being well utilized. 70% of the respondents saying they have taken advantage or have used these amenities. Satisfaction was about 75%, being high with the condition of the amenities themselves. There was concern by 24% of the respondents indicating that there was some areas for targeted maintenance and improvements, and that resided within pools, arenas, community centers, libraries. Obviously, this relates back to some concerns that we're seeing with how the facilities are managed. Cleanliness in the change rooms came out as a topic or a comment that had been received, and that brings us some opportunities for recommendations within that in terms of also modernizing the facilities. Next slide, please. On the outdoor facility, recreational facilities, we saw higher usage. So we saw about just under 80% indicating that they use these facilities. But the condition or the expression of how well the condition of the amenities were was equally as strong at 75%. And of the 25% that said identifying areas for improvement, it included like washrooms, trails, dog parks, and ball diamonds being as areas for focus. And this highlights again some areas where we could look at improving accessibility, cleanliness, carrying the theme, looking at dock waste, landscaping, etc. Next slide, please. When it comes down to the proposed levels of service, the indication of the comments that we received was that the survey indicated that there was a desire to maintain. It's a little small to read on the first one. The outdoor and then increase. Oh, sorry, maintain on the indoor and increase on the outdoor. And you can see what was proposed by the team on the percentages. Next slide. On the emergency services, 45% of the respondents indicated that they have interacted with the Woolwich Fire Department. There was a very high satisfaction with it, 86% of the respondents rating their interaction as very satisfied or satisfied. Significant appreciation from the comments on the emergency services. 7 of the 14 comments that we received back were just praising the group itself. So yeah, amongst that, high marks in terms of response time was brought through, the professionalism, their interaction with the community, some comments or concerns with regards to equipment, looking at the boundaries of the area, a need for communication within the service coverage, those comments that come through. If you want to go to the next slide, please. You can see here, there was a general desire to, I'll say, improve upon the levels of service, so increasing either the staffing or decreasing the response time was the theme across from what the community had said, and then from the proposed level of service or the difference. The team, there are some areas where they are aligned together, either maintaining it or increasing it at the same time. So if you want to go to the next slide. Stormwater services, there was obviously some concern from respondents, about 20% saying that during heavy rainfall, there was concerns over flooding, localized flooding. I think the 86% said of those they were not at their property, and 80% said they were not impacted by flooded roads. But obviously there is still some concern with the flooding. Yes, you have 18% saying that yes, they did experience it. They were still satisfied. So 55% of the respondents had indicated that they were still satisfied or very satisfied with the response or the service, with 38.5 indicating that they were neutral in terms of their satisfaction in the service area. Some of the targeted areas of comments were around drainage, highlighting or emphasizing the need for infrastructure enhancements in certain areas. There was some areas in terms of just, in addition to that, erosion control measures that might be brought up, proactive maintenance or cleaning of debris, education to the public in terms of being able to understand how to maintain or how to better manage the water runoffs with cisterns or rain gardens. So those are some of the comments that came through from the survey, the results. If we could go to the next slide. So in general, there was a desire to increase is what the survey proposed. And then on the town side or the experts looking at maintaining some of those existing levels of service, again, reporting back based on some of the findings and where the work will go and what needs to be done. We can go to the next slide. Transportation services, obviously one that comes through. So in this particular slide, we've got the blue and pink as indications of dissatisfactory or dissatisfied conditions or from the respondents. So approximately you can see 25% generally in that dissatisfied phase. There is a teal color where respondents were not impacted by it. So there kind of shifts or moves the graph a little bit. Concerns over in terms of better road conditions. They had named specifically a couple areas, Barnswallow, Camp, Arthur. Some conversations or some comments with regards to clearing responsibilities, more frequency, and more improvements of the services, generally leading to a desire to, increase or improve those areas, looking at traffic management in some areas as well. If you look through on the slides themselves, the top ones, paved roads, gravel roads, you can see more towards the 50% quartile or percentage point of dissatisfactory responses. Yet there's still, you can see some satisfactory responses or feedback, I guess, in some of the other areas as well. And then the next slide. So this is a kind of a text summary of the below. So I'll just go through some of those. On the paved roads, the satisfactory was mixed with 22% saying respondents were positive sentiments, or 48% were dissatisfied, 30% saying they had no preference. Key concerns being potholes and the smoothness of the roads. On the gravel roads, the responses were not as positive, 14% satisfied, 40% expressing dissatisfaction, and 45% representing, they were indicating that they had no preference. The feedback highlighted, an area for improvement with grading and maintenance. Snow removal services. Obviously, township has done a lot of work in the last couple of days with regards to snow. The feedback was divided into space, 40% saying they were satisfied, 24% saying they had no preference, and 36% saying they were dissatisfied. A common theme with the survey results was looking at improving sidewalks within the township. Road maintenance was neutral, with about a split, a third being neutral, a third being dissatisfied, and a third being, or 25% being satisfied. Common theme was maintenance frequency and road condition repairs being an area to look at. Bridges and culverts at a high satisfaction, 50%, 40% expressing satisfaction, 40% no preference, 12 being dissatisfied. And sidewalks in general, 52% satisfied, 24% neutral, and 20% expressing dissatisfaction. Again, looking for areas for local improvement. You can go back to that next slide, please. So as it was highlighted in one of the other general themes, transportation being an area that the public wanted an increase in performance. The township, it does generally align within what was being proposed by the team, and some areas being an increase, some areas being a maintain, and then that's going to help drive some of the work that will be delivered. Go to the next slide. Now moving on to wastewater services, a total of 70% of responses expressing satisfaction, 25% were fairly neutral. Of the respondents, the dissatisfaction was split 2.3%, about a participant indicating that they were dissatisfied and very dissatisfied. Overall, it did receive positive feedback in this area. 90% of them saying they haven't had any issues in the last 5 years with backups, and then ongoing, just maintaining regular maintenance, citing the need for more flushing systems, more educations across the municipality in terms of how to prevent blockages, was a reoccurring theme that came up in the comments that we received. If you go to the next slide. In this particular case, the township and the residents wanted to both increase the level of service. Next slide. Water services, again, on this particular area, a generally positive response with availability and reliability of the water services, 48% saying they were satisfied, another 25% saying they're very satisfied, 13 and 11 dissatisfied, and only 1.9% very dissatisfied. So very favorable service response. Again, some of the themes that did come up on this side, as we saw through the comments, discussion around lack of water pressure, perhaps some discoloration in the water itself, transparency, and how the work is being done. If we go to the next slide, please. So in areas where they wanted to increase the availability of water, there was a service to increase it. From a reliability perspective, both of them were on a maintain. Those were aligned with the work that was being done by the township. Go to the next slide. So this is just a snapshot in terms of getting one set of data from the community, how it feeds into the process of the development of the asset management plan. Taking this engagement obviously leads us into making sure that we have educated and informed decisions that can be made. I think as mentioned earlier, there is another workshop that will come through as we start looking at how these insights will lead us into what some of the financial outcomes will be with an update on the workshops later in April, and then obviously an ongoing piece with the lifecycle management and financial strategy. I'll be continuing through work that's already been started, but we'll continue through for the next little while as we iron out some of the details and make some more concrete recommendations. If you go to the next slide, please. So the next steps within this obviously is to work through those lifecycle managements, understanding now we have these levels of services and where the feedback we're getting from everyone or from the survey, as well as some of the work that's being done by the departments, and then building out the financial strategy piece to maintain the appropriate levels of service. Moving into that, we'll have another council presentation on the levels of service and financial strategy and working through the draft asset management plan report. That's it. Next slide, please. So appreciate everyone's time. I guess we'll open up for any questions I may have.
Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. This was a good presentation, and I thank you for the work that you've done. Having a holistic understanding of our assets are indeed important. One thing that I would like to delve into a bit more is the methodology behind determining levels of service. Could you give us a bit of an overview of how we determine the level of service and what methodology you used?
There's a number of different types of methodologies available. So great question. Thank you very much. There's obviously certain ones that are prescribed within the regulation in terms of these are ones that shall be met. And then obviously there's ways to improve and measure. Having a wide variety of data from industry best practices helps set the stage as to what data to collect and then how to use that data to make better informed decisions. So there's no really one simple spot that says go look here for the types of metrics. It's just a starting point. And we leverage across not only what's been done in this municipality, but other local municipalities, as well as then what's in industry, to look at the various areas as to how do I determine that my fire response time should be this many seconds versus, hey, I need to have this water pressure, chlorine, whatever it may be.
Thank you. And then just to follow up, is part of that methodology reliant on survey data that we get from residents?
The survey data helps inform an aspect where a public engagement will tell us kind of a more holistic understanding of it, not necessarily the technical measures. So we may specify that you want clean drinking water. So that will be a very public specification or a service level. Everyone knows you want to be able to drink your water. Buried within that, you'll have a number of other technical specifications that will help be able to determine, are you actually delivering clean drinking water? It's very hard to measure clean drinking water, but it's easy to measure that. What's my pH? What's my chlorine? What's my sanitary level? So they're related to that, but not necessarily a clear cut copy paste.
Okay. Yep.
I just wanted to add to what also the surveying helps us to do is as we're becoming more informed as an owner of the assets, we want our community members to be more informed too. So I think this was our first survey engagement on our asset management plan. And I think what really jumped out to us was there's a lot of information that we need to share. There's a lot of information we know, but it's not necessarily dispersed amongst the community. And I think the more informed our community is, the better they are and the better Woolwich is in general. So I think that's something that really jumped out to us is there are certain themes that kind of resonated that came back and we're like, hey, wait, we should do a bit of an education session on some of this. What legislation do we fall under? What are some things we can share with the community so that they can be more informed as well? And then advocate again for whatever that may be, increased levels of service, whether it be upper government funding. I mean, we use that for a whole host of different things, but council obviously feeds into the plan, the community feeds into the plan, and then you hire professional staff to help manage that plan as well. So it is a joint initiative ultimately.
Thank you for that. I guess my one concern is when we talk about proposed levels of service, a key component of that is the user experience. And when I look at the survey, and this is not in any ways just an issue that I see within the asset management plan, but whenever we engage in surveys, we have a small population, which doesn't seem statistically significant. And I fully understand that it's hard to garner responses from residents, and that at this time there was several surveys. What this does beg the question, though, is do we have some sort of plan at the staff level for when surveys are going out? Are they competing against each other? How are we engaging with residents? Because again, why this is great to have, I really have a hard time when I see 65 respondents, 53 of which live in the township, providing us guidance on the level of service and how they feel about those assets that they're engaging with. So that's where my biggest concern lies. And again, I'll just say it's not something that I see just within the asset management plan. I've seen it in a number of areas where we've had asked for residents to engage with us and we haven't gotten the feedback, and I worry about basing decisions off of those.
Yeah, fair point, Councillor Grant, and through you, Mayor Shantz. I think in this case, there was definitely some survey fatigue. We had a recreation master plan that was on the street. We were eliciting response from, we had the budget, and we had the asset management plan. We thought it was incumbent on us, though, even with that fatigue, that we needed to get something from the community. So this is step one from our perspective, from an asset management plan. So I think we would continue to do this and get feedback from the community. I mean, when you look at the budget, which you would think would be the single biggest thing affecting a resident of Woolwich, I think we had under 300 respondents, right? So there is the single biggest thing in a population of 25,000. Appreciate not all of them are homeowners or, you know, property owners or whatever, but they're all living here. And so generally speaking, you don't have a ton, and you can deduce many things probably from that. I think it's still incumbent on staff to elicit responses that could indicate that some are satisfied, those maybe aren't responding. It's tricky, right? But I think the important part is that we continue to get out there, we continue to provide education and opportunities for people to weigh in, because they do have a voice, and that's the message. So again, this is our inaugural survey from the asset management perspective. We will continue to move forward with that. We are legislated to do that at least every 5 years, but annually we want to be touching this thing. I'm not saying annually we will survey, but I think within, you know, 3 to 5 years for sure we need to do that. And hopefully we get more respondents going forward, but appreciate the commentary.
So maybe if I could just jump in on that, along that line, then, if I'm a taxpayer, why should I care about the asset management plan?
Mayor Shantz, it's a great question. As a taxpayer, you should care, because it was fascinating to us, and we live and breathe this. I was shocked to find out we have about $1.2 billion worth of assets in the township of Woolwich. So do the math on that. I don't know what that per person or per capita number is, but it's significant. And we're all users of service. There are ratepayer services such as water and sewer that if you are on the system, you pay for the system. But so many things that and every year we're just coming out of budget, we struggle with 10%, right? A 7.5 base, a 2.5% infrastructure reserve. And what we're demonstrating, and we, you know, stay tuned. I think for anybody watching today, you want to pay attention going forward, because we will be presenting a fiscal sustainable management model coming in April. And we're looking for a council resolution in June, I believe, late June, to endorse the plan. And that will start to demonstrate where some funding gaps are. Our infrastructure, everybody's going to be in an infrastructure deficit. We appreciate that. And there needs to be a realistic strategy to move that needle. We know our neighbors have struggled, and there are big numbers being floated around from a percentage perspective. At the end of the day, the residents live in a community and they consume services, and there needs to be priorities at the end of the day. And that ultimately in a democracy where council weighs in, and that's where you have staff that obviously have professional opinions and they're hired to do such, but the community ultimately has a say. So I think it is important as a ratepayer, as a taxpayer in any municipality, you want to pay attention to what's happening at your local level. That is your biggest bang for your buck, I'll say.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. Thanks for the report. Just looking at it, it's very high level, but it proposes changes in levels of service. So is there going to come a time where you'd be able to indicate what that cost of service change will be? So if we want to increase the service to a certain
Yeah,
percentage,
so
we will
that'll,
have a dollar value associated with it.
yes, thanks for the question, Councillor. So yeah, as we go through the financial strategy, that's where we'll start seeing specifics in terms of what some of those dollars are and how those dollars are made up. And they are summations of things within the asset management plan and the model that Jared was alluding to.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation and your work on this, and we look forward to hearing the next steps and next report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Next item is the preferred Breslau secondary plan, land use plan. And to present the report, I'll call on Manager of Planning, Victor LaBreche. You should probably grab the mic and bring it down. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, Township Council, Township staff, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Victor LaBreche, Manager of Planning for the Township, and here to present background information as well as the preferred Breslau secondary plan, the land use plan for Breslau going forward. And as noted in our report, the recommendation is for Council's adoption of the preferred plan. No, there are no policies proposed at this time, and input on those policies will come more specifically with the broad official plan that will come out in draft in the coming months. Just some speaking points to this plan and some background. The Breslau settlement area outlined in the map in total is now shown in red. It comprises the older village residential, village Main Street, new residential areas, commercial areas, and employment areas. The current Breslau area settlement plan was adopted by Council in 2016, and several directives since then have come out primarily from the province, as I think we all have heard and known over the last few years through the provincial government, that required the update to this official plan, also together with removing regional planning from the process here within our region. The directives from the province were heavily influenced by the Build More Houses Faster Act. Ongoing preparation of the new official plan will include within it specific policies to guide the future growth of Breslau, which will bring development through Breslau secondary plan exercise. The planning policies for Breslau, as will be contained within the broad new official plan, will guide land use, growth, and development across the entire township to a planning horizon of 2051. A significant factor to account for within the preferred Breslau land use plan is the increase of the overall Breslau settlement area boundary that was adopted finally by the province in April of 2023. The original boundary is shown here sort of in a blue greenish color. The new is red. The current settlement area as contained in the township official plan, as is shown in the green area, is 617 hectares. The new settlement is 2,508 hectares, which represents approximately 400% expansion of the existing settlement area, a total increase of almost 2,000 hectares. There have been two prior Breslau Community Open House sessions to inform the preferred plan within this report. The first held in June of 2023, the second in June 2024. There have been several engagement opportunities, discussions with various stakeholders and the public over those 3 years. In the public open house, initially there was three concepts proposed. One that had more of an employment focus, second had more of a residential focus, and the third was more of a mixed use focus. Considering all the comments that were provided, and the exercise also informed by survey questions to the public, and those survey answers could be provided on Engage Woolwich and Engage Region of Waterloo websites. It was concept number 2 that was clearly the favored, to have more of a residential focus with the growth in Breslau in the future. The projected long-term population in Breslau is to be a minimum of 30,000 people, employment at approximately 9,000 jobs, and a minimum gross density of 55 people and jobs per hectare is required within the future growth of Breslau, and an ultimate build-out population identified to 2051. Of course, existing natural heritage features and buffer areas were respected, the limits of the region of Waterloo Airport identified and to allow future growth there, and general locations to serve the community and the public, such as community areas, parks, schools, determined through the recreational master plan. This is the preferred plan that is attachment 1 within the recommendation report. The preferred plan provides for greater separation of future residential from the airport and the higher intensity employment areas to the south. The plan provides for a traditional core along Woolwich Street and Dolman Street, providing for greater density. I'm not sure if the pointer is working on this, but that is shown in red, and also an intensification area in hatched area pattern. To provide more of a traditional core and growth for a traditional core within Breslau, out to Victoria Street, and then beyond Victoria Street to the northwest along the future extension of Fountain. It's identified as a future strategic growth area, and the intensification and density policies there are certainly greater. Also, we have the MTSA located here where the GO station is, and that ring around it is about a 500 meter radius to allow greater density around the future growth station. Public agency comments are included within the report, a rather large attachment, as you may have seen, along with sort of a matrix of responses from staff to those comments. In terms of the township strategic plan impacts, council's adoption of the preferred land use plan for Breslau will cultivate long-term economic prosperity, sustainability and manage growth for the township, particularly in Breslau in this case. This action will allow township staff to advance the land use strategy and staging development policies in Breslau. Related financial impacts, no direct financial impacts or costs to the township are associated with the adoption of this plan. However, as noted in the concluding areas of our report, this is directly tied to housing accelerator funding initiatives with the federal government. In the completion is a requirement for the completion of preferred land use plan for Breslau within the first 2 months of this year. Council's adoption of the preferred land use plan, which is attachment 1, would fulfill the particular half funding initiatives and go towards securing the township's next half installment of approximately $1.6 million. Interdepartmental impacts. While there are no interdepartmental impacts at this point, certainly ongoing discussions will continue as they've had over the last 2 years with various departments, including development engineering, infrastructure services, and that particularly with the region of Waterloo for appropriate staging and development directives within the plan that will follow in the policies that you will see in the coming months. Council's endorsement of this preferred Breslau secondary plan is respectfully requested. The land use plan will provide staff with required directives for us to finalize and circulate to the public and commenting agencies a township-wide official plan, which will include within that township-wide official plan the Breslau land use plan. Staff will hold future open house public meetings, statutory public meetings on the new draft of the official plan later this year, and we'll certainly continue and oblige any one-on-one meetings with various stakeholders. This will provide further opportunity for the preferred plan to have some revisements to it as the process concludes to releasing of a sort of a parent, again, township-wide official plan that will guide the growth not only in Breslau but within the township. And as referred to, related to the requirements of our half funding. That's all I would present at this time. Not sure if there's anything further that Deanne wishes to advise, and we'd be pleased to answer questions. Thank you.
Real quick, I think Victor has covered everything. I just wanted to highlight 3 quick points. One, this is a land use plan only. There's not policies or staging policies that go with this. So we're just looking for endorsement of the plan as the land use for the ultimate build out of Breslau. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this does show the ultimate build out of Breslau. This is not what will happen in the planning horizon to 2051. So that's a key thing to note as well. The actual staging and what gets developed up till 2051 will be significantly less than this full build out, and that will be determined in the staging policies as well that we will be drafting in the new official plan. And the last thing is just that how this date is very key for us, that we do get council approval of this land use plan today, because as Victor had mentioned, it is tied to half funding in order to complete the Breslau secondary plan and get some money allocated for our full official plan. And then just to let council know about the next steps after approval of this plan, it will be combined into the broader official plan, as well as the regional official plan will also be combined into one big official plan for the township. And the new process now is that it would go to the province for approval. And before we do any public consultation on the policies in the official plan, the province has a 90-day review period. And then after that 90-day review period, we would go out for further public consultation on the policies.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Deanne, for that. I had made a note about the phasing and the importance of the phasing. One of the things that I like and I had hoped would come out of the change in the boundaries was being able to see the fullness of time where we can place key things like I see, for example, recreation markings on there. But I do have a question, and that is about the natural heritage systems. I maybe should have given you a heads up about this, but I just thought of it. So there's a lot of green on this map. Do you know what percentage or how much of the land, particularly north of that employment land, is natural, and is the intention then to preserve all of those green areas?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, for the question. Certainly, when you're looking at the plan, it does stand out, correct? So an obvious question. We would note that the green areas, now we're using terminology that's required or within the provincial planning statement, which is previously the provincial policy statement. Provincial planning statement now calls these area natural heritage systems. So that's what's reflected in our legend. And also refers to subcategories of natural hazards, which sort of at the bottom of our legend here. And all of those natural heritage, I would say probably 60% of those to 70% of the natural heritage systems on this plan have not been studied. So we use federal, provincial, and local GRCA mapping that is certainly accurate, and ministry mapping to include in this plan. But one of the statements that will be within the official plan and the secondary plan here in this case is these areas are subject to site and property specific study, such as an environmental impact study that would bring in several natural heritage consultants to do a study, review each area. And this typically shows the worst case scenario, long story short. And those studies often refine it or reduce the impacts of those heritage area to the true sort of core features within the properties.
Sorry, go ahead, Deanne.
So just to add to that, also a large portion of these do require further study that we have identified in our development charges study as well, because there's a large cost to evaluating all of those natural features.
Okay, thanks. One thing that I notice is that they're connected, and I know in terms of wildlife in particular, those connections are really important. Is that something that we look at here as well? Either of you?
Yes, definitely. That's really part of the basis of a lot of these foundations, to have natural heritage features, have continuous corridors uninterrupted for wildlife, and the prime sort of vegetative features to be kept within a corridor.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Actually, I have two questions. First one is, have we done a commercial study? With that number of houses looking to go in, we have no amenities at this point in time for the residents of Breslau. And I really hate to see a mass of homes go in with nothing for the residents.
So I can start, and Victor can add to this as well through you, Madam Mayor. So there are a number of locations on this map that have been identified for potential mixed use, potential commercial, core area, opportunities to have those commercial uses. The commercial uses, in order to establish, they do require certain numbers of residential population in order to support them. But we have indicated several opportunities on the plan for them to establish when those residential numbers are there. So yeah, the idea behind the whole Breslau secondary plan is that it will be a complete community with commercial, with recreation, with community spaces, with all those types of services. And they are planned into the broader land use plan, and they will be identified in the policy and the regulations where those type of uses could be incorporated.
Thank you. And my second question is in regards to the open house input. How many residents put their input into this plan versus how many developers? I was at the open house and I saw a large number of developers, and I'm not sure how many were actually residents that were giving us their input. Do we have any idea of those numbers?
So again, I can start with that. So we did end up with, I think, like I'd have to pull out the numbers again, but approximately 200 residents or 200 people that came out to those open houses. Most of them were residents. We did receive a lot of written comments from developers and representatives of developers that own land in the area. A lot fewer comments were written from residents. We did speak to a lot of the residents at that community open house. I think that the reason probably for fewer comments from the public is that they were already residing in that area, in the existing areas that were already planned for and that have already been identified in the plan, whereas the developers owned a lot of that land that was outside and that was in the newer expanded area to be developed. But we did receive a lot of input at the public open house, but you're right, not a lot of written input was received from public.
Thank you.
If I may just quickly add to that, while I wasn't technically at either of those open houses, just reviewing the background information, I know there was surveys that were posted on the township's website, the region's website, and advertised at the open house meetings. The links were provided. So there was a lot of the filling out of the surveys were primarily actually done by the residents, not so much the consultants that were involved, or developer property owners, if you will. There was I got up to around 350 responses on the surveys, which was really helpful to inform and narrow down the preferred concept again, which is more of a residential focus rather than employment or mixed use. And just to add to the Councillor Bryant's previous question, there are really three categories in the land use designation, as Deanne spoke to, in terms of allowing commercial, and that is the core area, which is shown in red and continues, as I mentioned, through the extension Woolwich to Victoria and then Fountain across Victoria. So that area of Fountain Street extension northwest of Victoria is intended to house larger, floor plate commercial uses, such as a grocery store or two. And also the service commercial area in pink would allow, related service commercial grocery store type uses, as well as mixed use do allow commercial and encouraged as well. So I think we've accounted for it. And as Deanne said earlier, this is a plan that could allow the maximum build out of this area well past 2051. And it'll just have to be staged accordingly and controlled accordingly by us, the township. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Schwint.
Thanks. Just looking at, excuse me, the airport lands, seems to me they extend further towards the Menno Street. Is the plan longer term to have another runway perpendicular to the current one?
So the airport is working on an airport master plan as well at this time. So hopefully we'll get some more details on where those future runway locations are. I just wanted to also point out, though, that not all of the airport lands will be used for airport necessarily uses, but they can also be used for airport supportive uses and airport employment uses.
So I can tell you that there is which direction is north up on this map?
Yeah.
There's a kind of a north-south, usually is a north-south runway that's shorter that they're looking, hoping to expand at some point in the future.
Okay, I don't have a good grasp of scale on this, but intuitively having a larger, we call it a north-south runway, going over all the brand new houses in Breslau doesn't make a whole lot of sense when there's a whole bunch of vacant land just to the east. So maybe we should be rejigging somehow before we get a bunch of houses built right over a landing approach.
Not quite sure I'm following, like the runway is there now. It's
That's-
sort of a secondary runway.
I'm assuming it's going to be made bigger and longer for bigger planes used more often as what Kitchener Airport expands. Do we really want to have that big runway there, or should it be a kilometer to the, I'm going to call it the east, where it's still some vacant land, some airport lands? Or are we taking into account the housing and commercial area above that landing approach and keeping the residential away from it?
And we don't really have a lot of say in the configuration of the airport that way, but I can certainly put you in touch with some of the airport folk if you really want to pursue that more, Deanne.
Yeah, and we have been involving the regional staff and the regional airport staff in the discussions of these plans. So we are aware, and they are aware of what we're proposing. And actually, their flight paths actually allow us to go a little bit higher in height because of the way that they are directing the plane traffic routes, if that makes sense.
And Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to either Deanne or Mr. LaBreche. I'm just wondering, we have a number of residents here today, and I'm sure there's a number of residents tuning in. Can you just let us know what the next steps for public engagement could be for kind of the Breslau secondary plan?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Grant. Deanne alluded to it a little bit, and I'll just try to refine it a bit more. At this stage, we're working to complete an internal draft of the official plan by the end of March. That will be then provided to interdepartmental circulation for comment. So then by the end of April, we're looking to have that ready to be sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. It's a requirement now as of January 1 of this year with the removal of regional government, who was the approval authority for local official plans. It's now the province. And they've also put another step in there to say we need 90 days. We've talked to some of our other colleagues and friends at various municipalities, and it's kind of a untested timeline just yet because it just started, right, like a month ago. So there's some rumor that the hopefully the province doesn't take more than 90 days, but they may. And we would have to put, extra pressure on them to at least can we get on with scheduling public consultation. You've had it for 90 days. So by, it would probably be by mid-June to late June by the time we'd advertise for our first public meeting. Open house, I would envision probably 2 open house type meetings, casual, informal. And then there's a requirement for a statutory public meeting that would be the formal consideration by this council to adopt the plan. We would anticipate and hopeful by, mid-fall, certainly by the end of the year at the latest. And then it goes again back to the province for their final approval. So really we're aiming to have it back to council for their consideration by mid-fall to adopt, and then on to the province and be in place certainly by end of the year or early next.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks for the presentation. We do have a delegate on this one, and that's Mr. Scott Bruinsma. Is Scott here? Yeah. Right.
Me and Victor have been talking most of the day, throughout the day, so I think we got a lot of that wrapped up. Our main concern, and I'm also representing a number of the families that live from Cobra Road to Kossuth and Shantz Station. So there's six different homes in that collection, 230 acres. And we've kind of we're trying to figure out what's going on with the land. There's a number of senior people in the homes that have farms of 60 acres, and we're in the process of wondering what are we doing with these homes. Information has been really vague. There's been a proposed flight path. I talked to the region in the airport. Then that's kind of been taken away. And if you look online, my property, which is 22 acres, it currently says that my elevation height is 0 meters of what's allowed, and 0 meters is not very high. And that's all of my neighbors as well. And they've said that actually they're not doing that anymore. That's supposed to be canceled. So I asked, this was a year ago, I asked that would be reflected on that data then, and it still hasn't been removed. So that's a concern. My father-in-law, they've moved to Luther Village, and they're at a point where they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing with their farm on Cobra Road, because of details have been very challenging. And Victor's been great to answer a lot of the questions, but from the other proposals, the sewer plan has drastically changed from some of the proposals, and kind of leaving out from once going around Kossuth and up Shantz Station to that kind of being totally cut off. So we're scheduled to be employment land, but with employment land without any services, it's kind of confusing in terms of, well, what happens in that land sale. So that's just, we're looking for a lot more sort of clarity with that area, and there is we just wanted council to know that collection of people, 230 acres, like we're talking together, we want, and we'd just like to know more.
Okay, thank you for that. And Deanne, do you want to speak to the questions?
So because this is just a land use plan at this time, that is the information that we have provided. We are still working on long-term servicing plans, the policy framework, the staging of the development, the environmental work for different areas in this plan, but we don't have all the information, and especially for some of the areas that are closer to Shantz Station Road, because there is a much longer term build out for these lands. So as we said before, this plan will indicate what the long-term plan is for use, but it doesn't have all the details for servicing and environmental work and all the things that have to go with that. And it will take a very long time to develop out this full plan. So at this point, we don't have all those answers yet.
So what's the best way for residents to get information so that they can know if they're thinking about their own land use and future for their land? What's the best way for them?
I would say absolutely stay involved in this process. As Victor mentioned, it will be a process to develop the policy framework, the staging, all of those things that have to go through the province first, and then we'll be out for a full public consultation process. That will include the long-term servicing plan for this area as well. So these are all things that are to come as we develop the policy framework. So that would be the opportunity is for these individuals to stay involved.
And is Victor the contact then?
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shantz. I'm just going to add to that we have a lengthy list of contact information that were circulated for this meeting tonight. Mr. Bruinsma is on that list and others, many others, and they'll be contacted directly, notified of when the draft is available and when there's a public open house and all of those things. And I would just add, in terms of the Cobra Road area, because of its very close proximity to the airport, and other sort of natural feature overlays in that immediate area. It's employment designated is what the intent is. And also in terms of servicing scheme, the plans that have been provided show optional corridors, but as I've discussed with Mr. Bruinsma, while they're showing optional corridors, the real question is who's paying for it? How does it get there? We know that the region is paying together with the township a trunk sewer up Fountain Street, but beyond that, if it's going to go much further to the east, there needs to be sort of a proponent or a group of property owners that contribute to the funding of that. And until that happens, these are just schematics that show where possible sewer lines could go, but the real question is who's paying for it and the timing for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Or questions for the delegate, I guess? No, okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this? We usually don't do that for this, but if council is willing to hear, yes, I'm seeing thumbs up. Go ahead. Do you want to just, can you come to the mic? There's a couple people online that can only hear if the mic's on.
This is a question for Victor. On one of the maps that looked similar to the one you were showing, there were the pink circles that said node. What is that a node of?
On the plan,
In the
sure. I could find Mayor Shantz to answer that question. Basically,
just use a mic.
yeah, it's
though.
basically
thanks.
it's basically and it's sort of an intensification area that would allow mixed use or higher density within that considered major intersection, which is one of the intersections or roads would be a regional road, for example, and so often those intersections are designated as nodes to allow for a greater density and intensity of and mixed use. Okay. And they're shown schematically. So, and that will also be, clarified in the policies that although they're a circle, there may be some, adjustments to them as we look at the actual property and the details provided.
Okay, thanks. Okay, yes. I should get you to say your name first too.
My name is Robert Engel on Cobra Road. One question, and I understand this is very early still in the planning. There's many steps to be taken yet. I haven't heard a lot about what our neighbors are doing to the south, meaning Cambridge. How much are we considering their planning to the area to the south of Kossuth Road, and how we could interact with them and financially benefit from their services and their planning. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. So yes, we are talking a lot with Cambridge and their long-term plans for the area, particularly when it comes to servicing, because servicing will have to be extended up through from Kitchener through Cambridge for the ultimate servicing plan. So yes, this is all part of our discussions. We do know where they're planning for their long-term employment uses and residential uses as well on the north border of Cambridge.
I'm glad you know. Do you share that?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So this will, again, it's all going to be coming out through the policy, through the greater servicing plan for the area that we are working on now. So this is all part of that future planning and the development of the policies.
Thank you. And just for the public record, we did have a delegate that was listed on the original agenda who withdrew their request to speak. And we also acknowledge written correspondence received from a number of different groups, GSP Group on behalf of EB Crest Kitchener Development Limited, from Pierre Chauvin of MHBC on behalf of Bill O'Neill, from GSP Group on behalf of Thomas Field Homes Limited, and from Emily Elliott of MHBC on behalf of Lowland Properties Group, Inc. So those should all be in your package, I think. Are there any other questions? No, seeing none, there's a recommendation before you that we accept the report and adopt the attachment as the preferred Breslau secondary plan land use plan to be incorporated into the new township official plan as part of the comprehensive official plan review public consultation process. A mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Cadeau, Councillor Schwint, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We do have some unfinished business. We deferred the Menno Street renaming topic from the February 4th Committee of the Whole meeting, and staff have compiled several options for council to consider. And I'll call on Senior Planner Stephen Dykstra to walk us through those.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Name is Stephen Dykstra. And as you just mentioned, yes, there was a recommendation that was presented to council on February 4th. Staff were then instructed to do some additional research, and we're back here as required. So just to go through the recommendations here, the staff recommendations 1 and 2 are still from the previous recommendations. We still maintain that those are the staff preferred ones. First one being the renaming of the employment segment and retention of the residential one. The second recommendation is being retention of the Menno Street for the employment section and renaming the residential portion. As per the council direction on February the 4th, we found another option, option number 3, and option number, which would be a continuous renaming of Menno Street, which connects the residential and the employment, and basically it's a continuous Menno Street name. And the fourth option is maintaining Menno Street as 2 separate segments. So yeah, I can bring up here, it's also in the package as well. Hopefully it shows. There we go. So this one is the continuous route option. As you can see, very poorly, but it's there. Menno Street, the residential section, which starts on Woolwich Street South. It continues along the residential section into the Mad West development, going down to what's considered Ottawa Street, and then going all the way easterly past Fountain Street, and then all the way over to Shantz Station Road. although this one has some difficulties in terms of the preferred option of staff, this one creates a continuous street naming for Menno Street. Additional signage, directional signage will be required for this at a couple of key points just to ensure that continuous wayfinding will be a little bit easier. And then in speaking with Dennis, the fire chief, he was also of the opinion that the continuous route was slightly better than the two street segments, although he was still of the opinion as well too that staff recommendations 1 and 2 were better for their purposes, for emergency response purposes. And I think that's pretty much generally it for you guys. And if you have any additional questions, I'm obviously here to answer.
Okay, just in terms of process, we do have the other motion on the floor, so we would deal with that in one way or another, but what I'm going to do is allow general discussion so you can sort of wrap your head around where you want to go with it. Are there questions? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to staff. For the continuous route, it's going through the new Mad West subdivision, so there's going to be new houses on that small portion of the street. That's correct?
That's correct, yes.
So thank you, Jared. So when it comes to street numbers, is that going to be a concern?
No, actually, we're lucky enough that we've actually numbered them out. We took some pens and paper and made sure that, yeah, it'll work out. Not only that, but there's, Jared, can you point to the empty area? That is south of Menno Street. Sorry, no, in the new portion of where that stormwater management pond is going to be for the no, follow Ottawa. Oh, where's the red button? Red button? Sorry, Jared, put you on the spot there. Yeah, in that area there too, if there's a number of address numbers that could be used in that area too. If there's some sort of a commercial or mixed use or whatever goes in there, there's a variety of numbers that could also go in there because it doesn't start till the 300s here. And it ends in I want to say 65 or something like that in here. So there's between 65 and 300 to use.
So just as a follow-up, if we have one street that's in the 100s and we have a second street that's in the 300s, would we be looking to have that middle street in the 200s exclusively for emergency services and whatnot to really delineate what part of Menno Street you're on? I'm just...
Yeah, possibly you could do the 100s here and then the 200s here. That'd probably be the easiest way of doing it, although I allow our clerk to number those for us because she's got a certain numbering system that she prefers. So
no,
not the point.
Other questions? Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Where Menno Street bends, are we looking at roundabouts at those two juncture points? Or are they just going to be stop signs and turns, or how are we going to manage those two areas?
Yeah, no, that's a 4-way stop there. This here is a 3-way stop. There's a potential that
I'm not sure if Bonnie.
Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah, I can't see that, so I'm just guessing.
There. That stops there, but Ottawa Street there is continuous.
Bonnie can't see that.
Sorry, I'm
pointing.
Yeah,
joys of Zoom.
Sorry, the intersection of Menno Street and Burkholder and the newly within the subdivision itself, that would be a 4-way stop.
Okay.
Where Ottawa Street continues along there, Ottawa Street would continue, and there would be just a stop at the T intersection there.
Okay, so if it's just a stop, is that going to create a problem with traffic flow for people getting onto that extension, or?
No, it doesn't stop traffic. That's where the way signage will be.
Because Ottawa Street's going to hook up, right? Eventually, the blue Ottawa is going to join to the red?
Yes.
that-
Yeah.
okay, so-
Yeah, it's one continuous street there.
So is that going to be create a problem though for the people coming down Menno trying to make a left?
The roads will.
Potentially going forward?
Jared?
Uh, Just through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Bryant. So what we thought to be, we'll call it Ottawa Street from Woolwich Street to Fountain, will function exactly the same way, Councillor Bryant.
Okay,
And we have an example of this in Elmira, where Wyatt Street and Hampton Street, they change, even though it's a continuous alignment. It'll
Right.
say Wyatt ends, Hampton begins, is exactly what would happen here. So really, it will function no differently. It's just a naming convention. It'll still be a three-way, but with one stop condition at Ottawa Street. Ottawa, even though it'll transition to Menno Street going towards Fountain Street, will be a through road. It'll just say Ottawa ends, Menno begins. It's really, it's not the preferred as staff had identified, but it accomplishes everything. It accomplishes Conestoga meets needs. It keeps the civic addressing the same for the residents, the existing residents of Menno, and still allows for growth to continue with proper civic addressing. So it's really kind of the best of all worlds, and it's just some minor signage alterations, really. But we do have examples of this in the township already.
okay. So eventually, could that become a roundabout? I'm just thinking of ease of getting off of one street onto the other for potential traffic flow. It's hard to explain when you're not there, I know.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So there is no change to the street fabric in this area through the plan of subdivision. So the transportation studies that have been done for the plan of subdivision are still valid. There's only a name change. So all the street fabric and all the traffic stops, the stop signs and everything else that's planned for the area will continue as planned. It will just be a different sign that will go up.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? So of the two options, not the two that staff recommended, but the two other ones, which one do you think is the better choice? Well, I was going to ask Deanne first, but then I'll ask you.
Yeah, if you're asking staff, from our discussions with emergency services, the better option is to have a continuous street. It's not the best option, but it's the better because of emergency services and they're not being disconnected.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Schwint.
So I'm really struggling with that. I see Ottawa Street becoming an issue going forward. So I'd like to hear from, I think we've got some people in the crowd that are interested in this one. Conestoga Meets, I know, is here, and hoping some residents are too. So would the chair permit some input from the community?
If it's council's wish, I'm in your hands. Yeah. Okay. Arnold?
Thanks very much. For us, either of them works because it allows us to maintain our address. But if this is the better one, then we're fine with either, really.
Did you have something specific you wanted to?
No, I just want
to hear.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any of the residents? Yeah. Can you say your name for the record?
Ken
Susan?
Ball, Menno Street, 47 Menno. This option that's on the screen seems to work for everyone. I mean, what I heard last meeting was we have a regional policy, no split streets. Part of that policy was most residents win the name, hold the name. I don't like that either. I understand the Conestoga Meets problem. So I don't see why this with a couple signs can't work. I'll find my way home tonight. The curbs in Ottawa Street are already poured. I mean, it's a done deal. There's no roundabout. There's no room for a roundabout. So that's the opinion of everybody on the street anyway. So that'd be it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. That's good to hear. We're glad to have the input. Any other questions from council? So I'll ask the clerk how you would like us to handle this, since this other motion is on the floor. Do you want us to defeat it first or just do another motion?
So through you, Mayor Shantz, I would say it's up to council to either defeat it or to, for the councillor who moved it, which was Councillor Schwint, to withdraw the motion, and then council could choose a different motion if they wished.
I forgot what the motion was, but I'll withdraw.
Okay, and Councillor Bryant, you seconded it. Are you good with that?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So then the motion, would someone like to move? Councillor Grant?
I'll motion to accept the third option of the continuous street.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
For everybody? Okay. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Yes.
Could I just address the council for one moment?
Council? Sure.
I just want to say thanks to council and staff for the time that you put into this. It's a very important issue for our company. You've come up with a creative solution, and it's very much appreciated that you've done this. So thank you.
Okay. Consent items. Tonight's consent agenda, we have 2 items for approval and 2 items for information public notice. Councillor Bryant has requested that item number 7 in the recommendations from Committee of the Whole be pulled for a separate discussion and vote. So before we pass a motion approving all the other items except number 7, does anyone want to pull anything else? No? Seeing not, then can I have a motion to approve all of the items on the consent agenda with the exception of, well, basically the budget approval? Councillor Grant, Councillor Cadeau, all those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, then we will deal with item number 7, which is that the Council of the Township of Woolwich respecting 2025 budget approval, approve the 2025 operating and capital budgets as amended with a net levy of $18,005,821 as summarized in attachment 1. Excuse me, direct that any tax-related savings below the proposed 7.5% tax levy increase, which is currently $27,185 or 0.17%, be allocated to the Infrastructure Reserve Fund and approve the one-time use of $160,000 or 1% of the infrastructure levy to be used to top up the equipment reserve. So Councillor Bryant, you wanted to pull this, so I will give you the floor.
I just wanted to pull it for a separate vote.
Separate vote. Okay. Any other comments on it? A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Schwint, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Staff reports and memos. We have 1 staff report tonight, and I will call on Director of Corporate Services, Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. In 2022, Council passed the Township's first comprehensive delegation bylaw. Since then, it's been updated 5 times for specific issues to ensure it remains current with Township needs and legislative changes. This report sets out a few different proposed amendments to the bylaw. They sort of fall into a few different areas. So housekeeping changes, delegated authority that staff was using but was missed in the original comprehensive bylaw, providing existing delegated authority to additional staff members, and providing additional delegated authority. I'll just go over that fourth category here, and that mostly relates to the Development Services Department. That relates to staff members approving OLT appeals. So staff recommended they be provided with this authority to ensure that they can respond on short notice, where where staff feel that the township can settle. And they are also looking at authority to approve plans of subdivision and plans of condominium. And finally, to waive the requirement for a record of site condition when they don't believe it is efficient to do so. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? I do have a question, and that is there anything in here that would indicate reporting back or how, we've had a good working relationship, and the staff have been really good at bringing things to us, but if that were to change, how would council be made aware of some of these actions?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. So through you, really, a lot of these don't have specific reporting back requirements. However, if council wanted to direct staff to add anything, we could do that for you. There are other sections of the delegated authority bylaw. For example, when council or if council is in a lame duck position, the CAO has authority to make some decisions that a lame duck council that couldn't make those decisions would do that. And what we do in that case is instead of a report with a recommendation on it, we provide an information report to you or to council. It looks very similar, but it basically just says the decision has been made by the CAO. So that is one option. Another option I can think of, for example, is in the grant section of the delegated authority bylaw. The clerk's department reports through the quarterly reports any grants, small dollar value grants that staff have approved.
So I know some of the planning kinds of things have been delegated to different committees and so on, and we expect a report. We get regular reports from those. Is there a way to get regular reports when we have delegated authority to any particular group, or?
Are you talking specifically for planning or for anything?
For anything.
If council would like reports, I mean the two ways that I can think of are simplest are either that reporting function where we write the same report we would have and just say the decision has already been made, or we could sort of summarize in that quarterly reporting. If there's anything specific, we'd be happy to update the bylaw to do that for you.
Yeah, I don't think I have a specific request there. When I was going through it, it struck me that depending on the council staff and the relationship, that it would be good for council to be informed of decisions that are made.
If I could, through you, Madam Mayor, just to get some clarification, I think it would help if we could further define the areas, just because some of the areas that we're going to be dealing with are data sharing agreements or things like that, that really are just to make sure that we can gain access to information from other agencies and bodies and things like that. I mean, if council's really interested in that, by all means, we can inform you of those sorts of things, but I think it would be helpful if somehow we were able to get more specific around, is it the planning decisions that would be of more interest, where there's information that council might benefit from being informed about, so they're not learning about it, on the street, so to speak, or through the media, that sort of thing. Just because I know that Mr. Smith has spent time trying to just make sure that we're covering also off areas where they're more administrative in nature, in terms of a lot of the agreements, data sharing and otherwise.
So the only one in here that's catching my eye is OLT appeals. The rest, I was fairly comfortable with delegate authority.
So through you, Madam Mayor, so just to respond to that, so that's just in a situation where we would be settling the case. And yes, I would advise council that we were able to settle. So those are the types of situations. So sometimes we end up with situations where there's small tweaks and changes that can be made that are not instrumental to what the changes are, and we can do them very quickly, and we can just settle and then resolve the issue rather than going back to council, getting our legal counsel here and so on. So those type of situations, and I would inform council if we are able to settle those.
I'm comfortable.
Anyone else? Okay, then I guess do we have a motion on that? Moved by Councillor Grant, second by Councillor Schwint. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I think we're at other business. I've got my papers kind of mixed up here because I've moved things around a little bit. Mayor's report on regional matters. It lists regional council honors exemplary citizens. There's I've forgotten the name of the award. Can you put that up for me? Yes, the Jack Young Civic Award. Thank you. And it was given to 3 previous councillors, regional councillors, Sean Strickland, Tom Galloway, and Elizabeth Clark, and also to Mary Jane Patterson, who's presented here from Reap Green Solutions. She's put in a lot of volunteer work, and that award is for people who have been provided regional leadership in a capacity of sort of connected with the region of Waterloo. So REAP is connected there, and I think they were all well deserved. Deanne, are you providing an update on rental displacement bylaws? Please go ahead.
So back in March of 2023, the city of Kitchener had passed a resolution regarding the rental housing tenancy displacements. That resolution included direction to staff for them to review rental replacement bylaws. At that time in 2023, this council had requested that we stay informed and update them with what happened with this issue. So that's what this is, to get this item off of the outstanding council list. So the city of Kitchener did follow up and do a best practices review, and they also got input from the city of Kitchener Lived Experience Working Group, what they call them. And that ended up with Kitchener passing a rental replacement bylaw last June 2025. Since the bylaw has been in effect, they have received 1 rental replacement application and they've issued 1 permit. So the way that this bylaw works is that if a property is to be redeveloped and there was previous rental units on that property, the developer has to provide compensation for those tenants, either through providing an alternative unit in the new building as a replacement or elsewhere, providing compensation to the tenants, or providing rent waivers for those tenants. And all of that is for a 10-year period. So that is the bylaw that they put in place. And as I said, it's had 1 permit so far.
Okay, thank you. The council reports and updates. I just want to start by acknowledging that we've had a very snowy February, and it feels kind of, in a way, it feels nice. It feels like when I was a kid, and now I feel much younger than I did before. But it's been a challenge for residents, but also for our snowplow operators and first responders. And so I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the efforts of all those who have braved extremely difficult conditions to work in winter road maintenance, operations, and emergency services. So thank you for all you do to keep residents as safe as possible. And I would ask residents to remain patient I think our roads have been cleared very, very well. I was in some other municipalities recently, and they are not cleared as well. So I don't know, Mr. Poupet, if you want to add anything?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, for the kind words too. I just want to echo those. Workers have been tirelessly on the roads very early in the morning before anybody's up in very dangerous conditions. Our emergency service providers obviously have to continue to attend in all kinds of weather. Just want to remind people to be kind. We're all ratepayers too, those people who attend as well. And just as Mayor Shantz had asked for continued patience through this event. It's I can't say unprecedented, but well over 20 years, I think, worth of snowfall. So, you know, an incredible amount across the region of Waterloo, and everybody's doing their best to accommodate. And appreciate that frustrations can run high too. There's a lack of room, but all hands on deck, and everybody's doing what they need to do, and we'll all get this through this together. So again, be kind to each other, and continued patience.
Thank you. Council, any other reports? We have one notice of motion tonight, and I'll introduce this if I can ask Councillor Grant to take over the chair for that.
Yep. So we have a notice of motion. The motion is to response to proposed tariffs. I will allow Mayor Shantz to kind of fill us in on this this motion.
Yeah, thank you. A number of municipalities have passed motions directing staff to do their best to buy Canadian. I acknowledge that it's a very difficult path because many items go across the border many times. But I don't think I need to read this all out. It was printed in the agenda for anyone to see. But I would ask council's support to direct staff to minimize the impact of tariffs on the township and do their best to, I guess, to buy local where possible. And I know we've always encouraged to buy local anyway, but to definitely look at that. The heads of council, so the mayors and the chair, the regional chair, and our CAOs are meeting on Friday. That will be our first meeting to discuss what this impact means for us. And so I'll have some other reports back after that. At this point, I'm not sure where that's going to go, but I guess I didn't go ahead and ask for a seconder for this ahead of time, but
I think that's my role.
I hope someone will second the motion.
Thank you very much, Mayor Shantz. We do have a motion on the floor. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Cadeau, any further discussion on this matter? Councillor Schwinn?
So I'd like to strongly support this motion. I am curious from staff's perspective how far they will take it. Throwing out examples, I know the Works Department, Infrastructure Development Services are looking at new vehicles. Are we looking for a vehicle that is assembled in Canada? And are we willing to pay a premium for that? I would argue yes. I'm hoping that's what the motion intends, but looking for clarification.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Director Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I did do a quick search for council's benefit. What we were looking at purchasing was a Ford Maverick hybrid pickup truck. It's made in Mexico, so not Canadian. The purchase price of that is about $41,000. I did look at pickup trucks made in Canada. As far as I could tell, the only option is a Chevy Silverado. It's made in Oshawa, Ontario, so Canadian made. Unfortunately, it's $55,000, so about a $14,000 premium. Most of that is because it's a full-sized pickup truck, and we were looking for a compact pickup truck. We don't have a need for a full size. So I guess in this specific situation, you know, looking for council's direction, because I surely don't want to go out and buy something that council doesn't want. But in addition to the purchase price, I also wanted you to be aware that it looks like from the Government of Canada fuel efficiency tool, I'd probably be looking at additional cost to run the vehicle in terms of annual fuel costs are about double. And then the carbon dioxide emissions would be about double as well, since you're looking at a full-size pickup truck instead of a small hybrid. So I think that's just one example of things that we're looking at, and certainly don't want to do anything that council isn't expecting or surprise council in any way. But my professional recommendation would still be the small hybrid pickup truck in this case. If it helps, I can let Deanne speak to the vehicle that Building's looking at.
So Jeff's going to have to help me out here, but my understanding is that it is made in Canada, the one that we are looking at.
I can help if it does help. The building department vehicle that they're looking at is a Toyota RAV4 hybrid again. It's made in Woodstock, Ontario, so a nice local company for that one. So definitely look for local preferences when we can, and especially when there's cost parity. And in fact, in this case, it was the best deal on small hybrid SUVs and local. So sort of a bonus for cost and for buying local.
Thank you, Director Smith. Just maybe to add on to that for context, I actually read a really good article recently about the interconnectedness of the North American auto market, which is that a single vehicle may cross the border 8 times to be made. A lot of components are made in Canada, assembled in the United States, made in Mexico, assembled in Canada. So in this particular instance, a vehicle may be difficult to separate out to a strictly Canadian built vehicle, but I do appreciate staff taking the effort to try and look for a more local Canadian project. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Cadeau.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I also appreciate this discussion. And I'm wondering if we can, and I'm not suggesting that we have to change the motion at all, but it's not even necessarily buy Canadian, buy local, as much as I do encourage that if we're taking a Team Canada approach to negotiations with the United States, should we be putting a policy in place to not buy American or buy Canadian or other countries' goods and services prior to the US specifically? Like when I hear the truck being assembled in Mexico, perfect. I mean, no concerns with that, especially if it's the lowest cost. If it was manufactured in Detroit, that might be more of a concern of mine. Is council supportive of that direction, I guess, is what I'm requesting.
Mayor Shantz, and then Director Brenneman.
Yeah, I mean, that was my intent, really, was not to necessarily be outright anti-American, but for staff to consider the economic impact on us locally and on Canada, and to allow for some of that discernment that's going to need to be made, because we are so interconnected right now.
CEO Brenneman.
Yeah, the only one that I would highlight for council is, that a lot of fire chiefs are struggling with right now with a lot of these motions is the only place you can buy fire trucks, by and large, is in the United States of America. So there will be some challenges, but I think the intent that I'm hearing from council is we make extremely best efforts where it's practical and feasible, and smart choices are being made to buy Canadian, even if that is at a bit of a difference premium, and I think at the end of the day, I think this is just about maybe at times where we're struggling, in the odd occasion, we can always consult with council with respect to any large or significant purchase, that sort of thing. But yeah, I just wanted to raise that. That's the only one I know a lot of the fire chiefs are struggling with is the realities of how fire trucks are made and produced.
Any further comments? Seeing none, there is a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Is there anything on the outstanding activity list? Seeing nothing. Oh, I did that already. Hang on. To the page. We have the number of bylaws in the hands of the clerk. Did I miss something?
No, when when it's my turn to speak, I do have an update for you. If you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Do you want to do that now before I do this?
I can do that now. I'll just ask council, we had prepared a bylaw to change a segment of Menno Street. And since council didn't do that, I don't believe that bylaw is required. So we'll remove that from your agenda. Mayor Shantz, then the bylaws would be numbered 7/2025 to 11/2025.
Okay. Down here. Okay. Very good. Thank you. So the motion we need is that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 07-2025 to 11-2025, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. And you can see those written on your agenda. Although this one is on their agenda, right?
Yes, this is on the
Okay.
agenda. It'll just be missing the Menno Street bylaw that doesn't need to be passed any longer.
Thank you. Councillor Cadeau, Councillor Grant, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I do believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. If anyone would like to adjourn, they could so move. Councillor Burgess, Councillor Grant, all those in favor? And that is carried. So the meeting is adjourned to meet again in regular session on March 18th, 2025. And thank you to everyone here and everyone who tuned in and all of those who left. Good night.